All right, chapter 2 of the book of Amos, continuing the prophecies against Israel and the people around Israel as well, similar as what we got in the last chapter. Now, verse 1 is, Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Moab and for 4. So again, that idea of the escalation concept there. This is Moab. This is the other daughter of Lot, the people that came from them. So Ammon and Moab are the daughters of Lot. So the distant relatives of Israel, basically. It says, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he burned the bones of the king of Edom into lime. So here's what's interesting about that. They didn't just, so what Moab and Edom sometimes would fight, they didn't burn, they just didn't like kill the king and then bury him. Yeah, you lost your king, we killed your king, yeah. They didn't just bury him, they didn't just burn him, they burned his bones down to a powder. They totally cremated him down to a powder. So they broke it down to lime, basically, some basic elements here. That king does not exist anymore. Basically, he's just powder. There's nothing left of him. Verse 2, excuse me. But I will send a fire upon Moab, and it shall devour the palaces of Kerioth, and Moab shall die with tumult, with shouting, with the sound of the trumpet. So again, most likely this is the Assyrian destruction, but could be Babylonian as well in there. But a lot of destruction for Moab coming. Verse 3, I will cut off the judge from the midst thereof, and will slay the princes thereof with him, saith the Lord. So not a good end for Moab. Verse 4, thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Judah, and for 4. So this is the southern kingdom. I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they have despised the law of the Lord. So they're breaking the commandments. They're not following the laws that God had put there, basically. And they have not kept his commandments, and their lies cause them to err, after which their fathers have walked. So when we think about this idea, this is basically they're not teaching the gospel. They're not just not living it, they're teaching the wrong thing, basically, to the people. And this says their lies have caused them to err. So again, they're living the lies, and the next generation doesn't realize that what they think is just normal is actually a bunch of lies that they didn't even realize were there, basically. So some assumptions were made. Now, it's interesting in this idea that they're not loving God, and they're not loving their neighbor either. They're not thinking about how can we help the next generation out. It's all selfishness. So they're breaking the 2 great commandments. If you think about when Christ talks about, when the lawyer asks him, what are the 2 great commandments? Love the Lord thy God, all thy heart, and love thy neighbor as thyself. They're doing neither one of those, basically, is what's happening here. So lots of wickedness among Judah. Verse 5, but I will send fire upon Judah, and it shall devour the places of Jerusalem. That's most likely more Babylon than Assyria, because Assyria never makes it into the city of Jerusalem. They destroy everything else, but it's Babylon that totally wipes them out and burns the city to the ground. Literally, they have a fire in Jerusalem during the Babylonian conquest. Verse 6, thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Israel, so this is the northern kingdom, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they sold the righteous for silver, and the poor for a pair of shoes. So they got rid of the people that disagreed with them. They sold the righteous, the people that said, this is not the way we should do it, we're going wrong. And they went, no, we don't like your opinion, we're going to kick you out, basically. They changed their laws, they prosecuted the righteous, they got rid of them. So that whole righteous, good is evil and evil is good analogy happened. And they didn't help the poor. They exploited the poor, basically, to enrich themselves. So bad times. In fact, verse 7, it says, that pant after the dust of the earth on the head of the poor, and turn aside the way of the meek. And a man and his father will go in unto the same maid, to profane my holy name. So this is the problem. So again, they pant after the dust that's on the head of the poor. They think, I need land. You give me the dust back. That's my land you're taking. They turn aside the way of the meek. So they're, instead of helping the meek, they push them out, basically. And then a man and his father will go into the same maid. Now you have to realize we're talking about sexual promiscuity here, sexual sins. In that day and age, sex was ownership. Okay, that was the person on top was the owner, the person on the bottom was being owned, basically. And so this is a father and a son claiming the maid as their property. They're fighting over property. And that's what's happening. They're marking that territory. And so it's not going well. Now, verse 8, and they lay themselves down upon clothes laid to pledge by every altar, and they drink the wine of the condemned in the house of their God. So they're committing sexual sins on the sacred temple clothes, they're desecrating sacred things, and they're destroying the temple rituals. That's basically what's happening. So we get quite a section of what's going on in Israel, the northern kingdom, basically, in these verses here. It's bad. Like, it's deplorable how bad things have gotten on the wickedness. Verse 9, yet destroyed I the Amorite before them, okay, whose height was like the height of the cedars. He was strong as the oaks, yet I destroyed his fruit from above and his roots from beneath. So he's saying, do you guys remember what happened to the Amorites? It's going to happen to you too if you don't repent. Verse 10, also I brought you up from the land of Egypt and led you 40 years through the wilderness to possess the land of the Amorite. So this is the Amorites lived in the area before Jerusalem, before the Jews and the Israel was there, and then they were told to come in and wipe out the Amorites because they were abjectly crazy wicked, basically, and completely destroyed. And so he's reminding them, look, I gave you their land after they committed the same sins you're doing now. I saved you out of Egypt. I've helped you. And this is how you treat me? Do the same things the Amorites did? Let's see, verse 11. I raised up of your sons for prophets and of your young men for Nazarites. Is it not even thus, O ye children of Israel, saith the Lord? Now, Nazarites are a special group of people. Nazarites are people who are set aside to be extra super devout to God, basically. So they're kind of set up for a higher and holier purpose, basically. I raised your sons for prophets. I raised them up to be a higher standard of living the gospel. And yet, you didn't follow the example. In fact, he says in verse 12, but ye gave the Nazarites wine to drink. Okay, Nazarites were not allowed to drink wine. That was part of their creed. They live a pauper life. They live a life without owning possessions and things, kind of a monastic life a little bit. And they're not to drink wine. And what do? You're corrupting them. You're giving them wine. Okay, and commanded the prophet, saying, prophesy not. So they ruined the people of God, and then they told them, don't tell us the truth. Prophesy not. So they probably enacted laws to say you can't speak. We're silencing the people who are telling the truth. Verse 13, behold, I am pressed under you, as a cart is pressed that is full of sheaves. So think about this. The righteous are being forced to not be righteous. The norm is to commit sin, and it is culturally strange to live righteously. This can also see God is being forced to punish the people due to their choices of sin. So we can see in verse 13 the oppression of the righteous. We can also see that God is being forced into letting justice happen because the people aren't repenting. They're actively pushing against him. Now, verse 14, therefore the flight shall perish from the swift. The strong shall not strengthen his force, neither shall the mighty deliver himself. So rather than feel that they're great and mighty and powerful, they're going to be weak and helpless. Basically, the people will not be able to flee the consequences. It may feel like they suddenly lose their natural strength or feel like natural laws are against them. Like suddenly it all goes bad and they can't do anything about it. It just happens and it's all done. Like a flood coming in, there's just nothing you can do. You're just gone. That's it. You can't help at all. So verse 15, neither shall he stand that handleth the bow, and he that is swift of foot shall not deliver himself. Neither shall he that rideth the horse deliver himself. So again, there's no escape. you're just destroyed. It's just gone. Could you imagine being in Japan when the flood, the tsunami came in? You're walking along the street, you're doing your normal stuff, and suddenly that wall of water just hits you, whether you were at home or on the street or in your car. There just is the flood, and you're struggling to survive. There's that show. Um, oh, what's that show? Ewan McGregor is in it, where he's the father of the family, and they're in Indonesia on vacation for Christmas when the Indonesian tsunami hit. That's a crazy show to watch. Just all of a sudden, there's tons of water, and everybody's being thrown in every direction. It's just total chaos. That's what's happening here. There's no escape. They're not getting out of it, basically. Verse 16, and he that is courageous among the mighty shall flee away naked in that day, saith the Lord. Even those who have the might are going to be scared. They're going to be out. This is the destruction we see through the Assyrian and Babylonian timeframes, basically, is what we're going to see here. So let's continue on in the next chapter as we see more.